The trade moon Karasha burned under a sky filled with red light. Explosions tore through the surface like fire raining from the stars. The people below ran in panic, their screams mixing with the deafening roar of collapsing towers. Ships tried to escape, but most were shot down before they cleared the atmosphere. It was supposed to be a peaceful place, a safe zone where over a dozen alien species lived and traded. But that peace had shattered the moment the Tarquin swarm returned. No one had expected them. Everyone thought the Tarquin had been driven back years ago. But now their black seed ships had come again, spiked, silent, and full of death. They didn't send messages. They didn't ask questions. They only destroyed. And now Karasha was next. From a hidden bunker deep underground, Regent Val, a tall, silver-scaled leader of the Talari League, stood over a cracked communication console. His hands trembled as he activated all known emergency channels, sending his voice across every corner of the galaxy. "To any power who can hear this," he said, breath shaking. "This is Regent Val of the Talari League. The Tarquin have returned. We are under attack. Karasha will fall within the hour. Please, anyone, help us." But all he received in return was silence. Static hissed in his ears as the console flickered. The larger empires, the Threx, the Zanari, even the proud Sayal Dominion, had gone quiet. They had all suffered the Tarquin before, and now feared them too much to fight again. No help was coming. Not from them. Val slumped forward, the weight of his people's lives crushing him. He thought it was the end. But far away, in a distant sector of space where few dared travel, a station floated above a cold red planet. This was Acheron Station, one of Earth's outermost defense posts. And on its command deck, Admiral June Cole was watching everything. She was a woman carved from fire and war, with tired eyes that had seen too many battles and lost too many friends. The transmission from Regent Val played on the main screen, the image flickering with static. Around her, her officers stood silent, waiting for her order. Cole didn't speak right away. She stared at the image of the moon falling apart, at the burning cities and dying ships. Most of the galaxy called Earth a death world, a planet too wild, too dangerous, too unpredictable. Its people were often feared, sometimes hated, always underestimated. But Cole didn't care about titles. She cared about action. And when the galaxy cried out, humans had a habit of answering. She stood straight and spoke in a calm, steel-edged voice. "The galaxy called for help," she said. "Let's show them what Deathworlders do." That single sentence echoed across the station. Within moments, orders flew across every deck. Sirens flared red. Hangar bays opened, warships powered up their engines, and the Iron Thunder Fleet, humanity's fiercest strike group, began to launch. Earth had heard the call, and Earth would answer, like a storm. The stars stretched past the Iron Thunder Fleet as it tore across space, engines roaring with purpose. Admiral June Cole stood at the command platform aboard the HSS Valkyrie, her eyes locked on the tactical display showing Karasha's location. Around her, humans moved like clockwork, pilots strapping into their fighters, engineers prepping weapons, and officers shouting coordinates over comms. Humanity had never been the biggest, richest, or most advanced, but they were relentless. Every scar on their armor and soot-stained hull told a story of survival, of impossible odds met with fire and grit. And now they were heading straight into another storm. Ahead of them, Karasha's moon was cracking under the Tarquin assault. The enemy ships were massive, shaped like spiked beetles, and swarming the atmosphere in black clouds. They didn't fly in formations. They moved like a living thing, screeching, twitching, reacting to threats with terrifying speed. As the humans neared, the Tarquin shifted, sensing new prey. In the moon's bunker, Regent Val's second-in-command, Aurochs, stared in disbelief at the long-range scanners. "Something's coming," he whispered, voice full of confusion and hope. Val rushed over, eyes widening as the scanner lit up with over 50 warp signatures, all marked in red, all bearing the Earth emblem, the burning star with wings. Fal's breath caught. They came, he said, barely believing it. The Deathworlders came. The first wave hit like thunder. Human fighters surged ahead, breaking the silence of space with missile trails and railgun fire. The Tarquin reacted fast, screeching in unknown frequencies and forming swarms to counterattack. The two forces clashed in a storm of light and metal. The void lit up with flashes of energy, ships exploding into debris and flame. Admiral Cole gave cold, precise orders as the Valkyrie's cannons fired round after round, ripping through enemy hulls. But this wasn't a clean battle. The Tarquin were chaos incarnate. They didn't care about losses. They slammed their ships into human frigates, crawled across hulls like insects, and tried to drill inside with organic claws. Aboard the HSS Fury, a boarding party had to fight hand-to-hand against monstrous creatures that looked like armored spiders with burning red eyes. Marine Corporal Elias Ward led the charge, shouting commands as his squad used shock blades and flamethrowers to push the monsters back. "Hold the line," he yelled, slashing a creature in half. "This ship doesn't fall." His voice, full of fire and defiance, became the chant across human channels. Back on the Valkyrie, Admiral Cole studied the battlefield and saw what the Tarquin didn't. Coordination. While the swarm attacked in fury, the humans moved in patterns, flanking, weaving, protecting each other. Humanity had spent centuries fighting worse odds on their own world. They were used to being outnumbered, and they had learned how to win. "Bring the hammer," Cole said calmly. Deep within the fleet, the HSS Hammerfall, a dreadnought armed with a planetary rail cannon, powered up. Its massive core hummed like a storm about to break. It fired once, just once, but the blast tore through 3 Tarquin seed ships, splitting them in half and sending shockwaves through their swarm. For the first time, the enemy hesitated. Val saw it too. He stood frozen, watching the Deathworlders do what the great empires had feared, stand against the swarm and not fall. "By the stars," he whispered. "They're pushing them back." The battle raged on, brutal and fiery, but now it was clear. The tide had shifted. Humanity wasn't just fighting. They were winning. And Karasha, for the first time in hours, had a chance to survive. The sky above Karasha was filled with fire and metal as the humans pushed deeper into the swarm. But even as victory glimmered on the edge of the horizon, the true test was only just beginning. The Tarquin, wounded but not broken, adapted fast. Their swarm changed formation, splitting into smaller groups and targeting the human fleet's supply ships and med frigates. They weren't just mindless beasts. They learned. Admiral June Cole stood still for a long moment, watching the enemy shift like smoke in a bottle. Her sharp eyes caught the pattern. The Tarquin weren't retreating, they were luring. The humans had hurt them badly, but now the swarm wanted to separate the fleet, draw them into the atmosphere, and crush them from within. On the lower deck of the HSS Valkyrie, Captain Ayla Moreno, pilot leader of the Ghost Talon Squadron, received her new orders. She and her team were to escort medevac shuttles to the surface, right into the Tarquin's trap. She didn't hesitate. "We don't fly to survive," she told her team, sealing her helmet. "We fly to make sure others do." Her squad launched into the thickest part of the storm, weaving through enemy fire, dodging suicide drones, and clearing the skies so the wounded below could be rescued. In the bunker under Karasha's broken city, the Talari survivors watched through cracked holoscreens as the shuttles descended. Alien children clung to their parents as explosions shook the walls. Regent Val had lost hope hours ago, but now he watched Deathworlders fly through death itself just to save strangers. And it broke something open in him. "Prepare the launch, Bay," he told Aurochs. "We're going to help them." Aurochs stared. "But Regent, we have no weapons." Val nodded. "Then we'll be their shield." Back above the moon, Admiral Cole received new data. The Tarquin were not only luring the fleet, they had hidden a hive core deep within the moon's crust. That's what powered the swarm. That's what called the seed ships. If it wasn't destroyed, this would never end. She contacted her best ground team, Strike Unit Echo, and gave them one order: find it, end it. The team dropped fast, fire around them, black shells scraping their drop pods as they pierced the storm. At their head was Sergeant Kane, a man built like a walking tank with scars across his face and a quiet fire in his heart. He landed first, drawing his sidearm and moving with purpose. Echo units stormed through the ruins of Karasha, guided by strange pulses of energy, until they reached a deep fissure in the ground, glowing with dark red light. It pulsed like a heartbeat, the hive core. All around it, the Tarquin waited. Hundreds of them. The unit took cover, fired back, and started a brutal fight with no guarantee of survival. Kane didn't slow. He moved like a man who knew he might die, but planned to make it cost the enemy everything. He activated his last plasma charge and said into his comm, "We've found the heart. If we take it down, they'll scatter. Tell Cole we go now." His voice was calm, steady, ready. Admiral Cole listened from the bridge, her jaw tight. "Understood," she said quietly. "Make it count." As Kane led the charge toward the core, something happened in the sky above, something the Tarquin didn't expect. The Talari survivors launched old, unarmed cruisers into the fight. They flew directly into the swarm's path, drawing fire, blocking drones, sacrificing themselves to buy humanity more time. Regent Val's voice came over open channels. "We are not soldiers, but today we stand with Earth." That single line echoed through the comms. It wasn't just the humans anymore. It was hope, unity, fire. Sergeant Kane planted the charge at the base of the hive core, covered in wounds but still standing. "For Earth," he whispered. "For everyone." Then he triggered it. The explosion shook the moon. The core burned, cracked, then collapsed into dust. All across the sky the swarm froze, lost, leaderless, confused. And then, like smoke in the wind, the Tarquin began to fall. The Deathworlders had struck the heart, and the storm they brought was breaking. Through the night, silence spread across the stars like a blanket after the explosion, but it didn't last. The moment the hive core shattered, the Tarquin swarm lost its rhythm. The enemy ships jerked in random directions, some spiraling out of control, others crashing into each other in confusion. The skies above Karasha, once black with claws and fire, began to clear as if the clouds were being torn away by invisible hands. Admiral June Cole stood at the front of the Valkyrie's bridge, her eyes fixed on the changing battlefield. She didn't smile, not yet. She had fought too many wars to believe it was over so quickly. She opened comms and called every ship in, the fleet. "Push forward. Hit them while they're bleeding. No mercy, no time." Her voice was steady, calm, but beneath it, her crew could hear the storm rising. The humans surged again. Fighters, frigates, and battle cruisers diving into what was left of the swarm. Captain Ayla Moreno led her squadron with surgical precision, tearing through enemy ships like blades through silk. The Tarquin tried to regroup, but without the core, they moved slower, dumber. For the first time, their fear was showing. Meanwhile, deep underground, Sergeant Kane's strike unit Echo limped out of the collapsing crater, dragging wounded teammates, their armor scorched and weapons nearly spent. Kane was still standing, half his visor shattered, but his eyes burned, with purpose. "We're not done," he said, holding up a cracked comm unit. "Let's finish this." Overhead, something new lit up the sensors. A massive Tarquin dreadform, their last command vessel, rose from a hidden trench in orbit. It was shaped like a twisted serpent, covered in black spines, with dozens of smaller ships tethered to its body like parasites. It opened its jaws and fired a beam of searing energy, slicing through a human destroyer in seconds. The fleet froze. Even after all they'd done, this thing, this final monster, was still waiting. Cole gritted her teeth. "All ships, target the dreadform. Priority 1. The battle shifted again, turning from scattered skirmishes into a focused storm aimed at this last horror. The dreadform unleashed waves of drones, each one exploding on contact, and several human ships vanished in fire. The sky turned red, and gold and black. Aboard the HSS Hammerfall, the crew rushed to reload the main cannon. Sweat ran down their faces. "We get one shot," the weapons officer said, "and it has to count." At the same time, Regent Val and his remaining Talari ships joined the final assault, using their damaged hulls to block incoming fire, opening holes in the enemy's defenses. They had no shields left, no weapons of power, but they had courage. Ayla Moreno flew under the Dreadform's belly, dropping decoy charges and leading the thing's attention away from the Hammerfall. "I need 1 more minute," the Dreadnought commander shouted. "Give me 60 seconds. Kane, back on the surface, looked to the sky and saw the monster above. He raised a flare from his suit, bright and red. A signal. "We still fight," he whispered. "All of us." The signal flashed across the battlefield. Ships rallied. Crews cheered through bloodied lips. Dying fighters screamed their defiance into the void. Humanity had come as a storm, and now they would become the thunder. The Hammerfall fired. The massive round blazed like a comet, ripping through the sky and smashing into the Dreadform's chest. The explosion bloomed like a second sun. For a second, everything went still. Then the Dreadform cracked in half, its black body peeling away in fire and dust. A long, low roar went through the human fleet, part cry of victory, part sound of those who knew what it cost. The Tarquin scattered what little remained, fleeing into the dark. The battle was over, but no one cheered right away. They looked around, at the wreckage, at the empty seats, at the names that would never answer roll calls again. Cole finally let out a breath and gave the only words that mattered. "We held. We answered the call." And across the stars, everyone who heard it knew the truth. When the galaxy cried for help, the Deathworlders had come like a storm. And they had won. Smoke still curled through the shattered air of Karasha's orbit, the stars dimmed by the debris of broken ships and drifting bodies. The Tarquin swarm had fled. The Dreadform was gone. And silence, deep and uneasy, took its place. But this silence did not bring peace. It brought memory, weight, and questions. Admiral June Cole stood in the command chamber of the Valkyrie, listening to quiet updates from medical ships and recovery crews. Thousands were dead. Thousands more wounded. Some ships would never return home, and some names would be written in silence, remembered in whispers. Her hand tightened on the railing. They had won, but what had it cost? And was the galaxy truly safe now? On the moon's surface, the remaining strike unit Echo members built a signal beacon from scrap metal and burned-out drones. "Sergeant," Kane's body was being lifted into a med chamber, still cold, but with faint signs of life. He had taken the blast up close, shielding his team with his own armor, absorbing heat and shrapnel with raw force of will. He had survived, barely. And now, even in sleep, his face looked like it was still ready to fight. Captain Ayla Moreno limped through the remains of her fighter, which had crash-landed during the final sweep. Her suit was cracked, her shoulder dislocated, but her eyes were sharp as ever. She walked among Talari children in the ruins of their city, helping them find food, shelter, and warmth. The young ones didn't know what to call her. Some called her Steel Angel, others just Pilot. But when she smiled through the pain and handed them clean water, they understood what kind of being she truly was. Regent Val emerged from the underground bunker with a changed heart. Where once he saw humanity as reckless, now he saw them as necessary. His people, the Talari, had survived because of them, not just through firepower, but through will. He sent a message to the Galactic Council, one that would echo through the stars. The humans came when no one else did. Let that never be forgotten. On Earth, news of the battle spread faster than light. Screens lit up with images of fire, of victory, of loss. Families waited for names. Cities rang with silence, broken only by the toll of honor bells. The world had given its best to answer a cry for help, and now it had to learn what that meant. Not all were proud. Some asked if it was worth the blood. Others said Earth should have stayed quiet. should have never answered. But most knew the truth. Humanity had always been alone on a death world, taught by fire and time to survive anything. And now, when the stars called for strength, humanity didn't hesitate. They brought the storm. Weeks later, survivors gathered on Karasha's surface for a joint memorial. The Talari, the humans and other species who had arrived too late to fight but in time to witness. White banners rose over the ruined city, marked not by flags or symbols, but by names, every life lost in the defense. Cole stood before the crowd, voice low but strong. "We were not asked because we were the strongest," she said. "We were asked because we understand what it means to stand when no one else will. That is what a death world teaches you, not to kill, but to endure and protect." She turned toward the children in the front. "When you remember the storm that came, remember why it came, not to destroy, but to save." One Talari girl stepped forward and offered Cole a small stone, smooth, polished, carved with her people's symbol for guardian. The Admiral held it tightly in her palm. No medals, no speeches, no grand parades could ever match that moment. Quiet, honest, pure. Far above the moon, ships began returning home, slow and heavy with what they had seen. The war was not over, not forever. Somewhere the swarm would rise again. Somewhere evil would wake in the dark. But now the galaxy knew something it hadn't before. When the void screams, Earth hears. When monsters rise, humanity answers. And when the stars tremble, the Deathworlders come not as conquerors, not as kings, but as the storm. Relentless, unbreakable, and just in time. The stars were quiet now, but the memory of the storm still lingered. Karasha's skies, once filled with smoke and fire, slowly began to show glimpses of peace. Burned fields turned green again. Crumbled buildings were lifted stone by stone, rebuilt by human engineers and Talari workers side by side. The scent of death faded, replaced by the scent of hope. But scars remained, not just on the land, but in the hearts of those who had fought. Admiral June Cole stared out from the bridge of the Valkyrie, her reflection faint in the glass. She had just received the list, the names of the fallen, too many, too close. Some she had trained, some she had shared stories with over tired meals and cold coffee. She placed a hand on the names, whispered something only the dead could hear, then turned to the Council transmission waiting on her screen. Across the galaxy, the Council had changed its tone. The once proud, cold leaders who doubted humanity now spoke with a different kind of voice, measured, respectful. They offered recognition, formal thanks, and a seat in the inner circle of defense. Cole didn't answer right away. She studied them, then simply said, "We don't fight for seats. We fight because someone has to." And she closed the channel. Far below, in a quiet Talari village, Captain Ayla Moreno sat near a campfire with a small group of children. One of them held her dog tag, turning it over with wide eyes. "You were really in the sky when the monster came?" he asked. Ayla smiled softly, her shoulder still wrapped in bandages. "Yeah, and I was really scared." The children blinked. "But you're a human. Humans aren't scared." She laughed then, a warm, tired laugh. "We get scared, but we fight anyway. That's the trick." The fire crackled gently between them. The stars above twinkled like old friends watching in silence. Not far from the village, in a clean recovery chamber deep underground, Sergeant Kane finally woke up. His body ached in ways he couldn't describe. Half his chest was covered in metal plates and his eyes struggled to focus. But the first thing he saw was his squad, every surviving member standing by, eyes red, armor scuffed, and tired smiles on their faces. "You look like hell," one of them joked. Kane tried to grin but winced instead. "Good. Means I'm still me." His voice was weak, but no one missed the steel in it. They helped him sit up, and outside the window he saw a new banner rising. Half human colors, half Talari. One future, forged in fire. Back in orbit, Earth ships began the slow journey home, not with cheers or victory songs, but with silent honor. Each carried more names than they left with, but they also carried something else, a message burned into every survivor's soul, that when no one else comes, when all hope fades, the humans will. Regent Val stood at the city's edge, watching the last of the war debris pulled away. He had changed more than most. He had seen the fury of the Deathworlders and lived to understand it. Not as mindless rage, but as a shield, terrible, powerful, and willing to stand between the innocent and the abyss. He would never forget it. And his people wouldn't either. In the council halls across the stars, whispers turned to promises. Treaties were rewritten, defensive rings were expanded. But at the center of it all stood one truth. Humanity had answered the call, and they had done what no one else could. As the Valkyrie finally turned away from Karasha's orbit, Cole looked one last time at the world they had saved. "We don't save to be remembered," she said to herself. "We save because we remember." And somewhere deep inside her, she knew it wouldn't be the last time. Somewhere, some world would cry out again. And when they did, they'd know who to call. Not gods, not heroes, but humans. From the world where fire shaped the brave and storms raised the strong. Deathworlders. The ones who come when all else fails. And as the ship entered the silent dark once more, Earth faded into the distance. But its storm would never be forgotten. The galaxy moved on, but the echo of Karasha's battle carried through every system like a quiet storm cloud on the edge of memory. Peace had returned, but it wasn't the same peace as before. It was heavy now, shaped by loss, sharpened by truth. The stars had seen what Earth's children could do when pushed. They had seen what it meant for Deathworlders to answer a call. On Earth, the skies were clear, but the hearts of many still carried the weight of the war. Cities held candlelight vigils. Schools taught the story not just as a battle, but as a lesson, about standing tall when fear says run, about helping strangers even when the price is high. At night, old veterans sat on benches with young cadets, passing down stories of fire and courage with trembling hands and proud eyes. In a small coastal town, Admiral June Cole stood alone on the edge of a cliff, watching the waves crash against the rocks. Her uniform was gone, traded for a simple coat and scarf. The wind tugged at her hair and the cold bit through her bones, but she didn't mind. She wasn't here for comfort. She was here for memory. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a smooth stone carved with the Talari symbol for guardian, the gift from the little girl. She held it tightly, then placed it on the stone ledge and stepped back. "We did what we had to," she whispered, "and we'd do it again." Somewhere far from Earth, Captain Ayla Moreno now flew relief missions. No longer in a fighter, but in a transport ship full of food, medicine, and tools. She and her crew traveled between damaged worlds, helping them rebuild. When people asked if she missed the war, she always shook her head. "I miss the ones who didn't come home," she'd say. "The war can stay where it belongs." But even now, when she saw shadows move across the stars, her grip would tighten on the controls, just in case. On Karasha, things were growing again. Not just crops, but culture. Human and Talari children went to the same schools. Soldiers who had once only known battle now helped build parks and homes. A statue stood in the center of the capital, not of a hero, but of two hands, one human, one Talari, holding each other tight. It was simple, but everyone knew what it meant. In the Talari Council chamber, Regent Val faced a new kind of work. No longer just defense or survival, but cooperation. He spoke often of humanity, not just of their strength, but of their heart. "They are a people forged in hardship," he said once, "but they are not cruel. They are sharp because the world made them that way, and when that sharpness is used to protect, they are unstoppable." He meant every word, and others listened. The galaxy, once cold and divided, now looked toward Earth with a strange mix of fear and respect. They remembered the fleets that came out of nowhere, fast and furious, silent and savage. They remembered how those same warriors stayed after the battle, patching wounds and rebuilding walls. The galaxy knew now if the Deathworlders came, it wasn't to conquer, it was to save. But they came like a storm because that's what it took. And not all storms are bad. Some storms bring rain to dry ground. Some wash away the filth, some wake the sleeping. Humanity had become that kind of storm. Somewhere in deep space, a distress signal blinked quietly in the dark. A small colony, unknown to many, was under threat. The message was weak, scared, lost, but someone picked it up. On a quiet outpost orbiting a frozen moon, a human crew gathered. They looked at each other. No orders needed. They loaded their gear, prepared the engines, and locked their course. One of them smiled and said, "Looks like someone needs help." Another replied, "Then let's give it to them. Deathworlders don't leave anyone behind." And just like that, the engines roared, the stars blurred, and the storm moved once more. Silent, swift, and unyielding. The galaxy would never forget. When they called for help, the Deathworlders had arrived like a storm, and someday they would again.